Explorations towards a writer's block. In 1959, I left my hurly-burly of Turkey, its rich vein of bigotry and psychic resonance behind. Though I did not focus on it then, I left my mother tongue behind, which is Turkish, which I am not. In 1961, I decided to become a writer. As an American writer, my first act was self-immolation. I had to destroy the Turkishness in me, feel, hopefully one day, dream in English. If I had a thought in Turkish, I aborted, nicked it. I chose not to have a thought exist unless originating in English, a language which overwhelmed me because I had not said my first words in it only 6 years before. The result was a writer's block which lasted about 10 years, during which I wrote 3 or 4 poems a year, all under 10 lines. My first breakthrough occurred with The Bridge, a long narrative poem which took me 5 years to write, 1970-75. Number 3, thought, speech, and acts. Now, as a thinking adult in English, I speak it with an accent. I speak Turkish also with an accent. Turkish is an unaccented, flat language with vowels of equal length. The accentual rhythms of English interfere with my Turkish. When I speak, Turks think I'm a Cypriot or an Armenian, an outsider. I must spend weeks in Turkey speaking no English for my accent in Turkish almost to disappear. My business in antique Oriental rugs, which is dominated by Persian Jews, my Persian has improved incredibly. I can speak the daily business lingo, its bargainings, lies, theatrics, jokes, at which I am very good, without effort. But I am illiterate in Persian. Occasionally, one of the merchants, knowing I am also a poet, recites a Saadi or a Hafiz poem, which is completely incomprehensible and slightly repulsive to me. 4, in capital letters AM, dash, Erica, lowercase, Erica. I find the first 2 letters of America infinitely stirring. It means pussy in Turkish, and I am in English. It resonates with a tension between motherhood, sex, M is also ma in reverse, and identity. As I write down these thoughts, I suddenly notice that M, AM, distorts the natural syllabic break of the word. It accents America instead of America. Not only do I speak English, but also mentally, in my mind's eye, hear it with an accent. The true power, even nature, of American English for me is accented, buried in this accent. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard. This is the quotation from Keats. The true power of language, its well of inspiration for me, lie in its conscious or unconscious errors, cracks, imperfections. I am a poet, an American poet, because I have a defective ear. And first lesson, this defect is the source of my possible talents and their limitations. But why not a poet in French or Turkish or Persian? All languages I knew before English. 5. Jewishness and accent. Last year, I attended a workshop on being a Jewish writer, run by Joel Lewis. In his meticulous way, Joel presented the participants with a range of alternatives, poems containing chicken soup and matzo balls, gemütlich, Taylor's and the Shtetl, Isaac Bashevis Singer, and Fiddler on the Roof. Louis Walsh's wonderful poem about the movement from the Lower East Side to the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, pre-war European poems in translation about the conflicts between the Yiddish and Goyish cultures, and translations of haunting Holocaust poems by Primo Levi. I am not an Ashkenazi Jew, though I share the underlying paranoia of the outsider of every Jew. Turkey was never invaded by the Nazis. I never ate matzo balls at home. In strictly European or mainstream American terms defined by the workshop, there is little Jewish in my writing. Am I not Jewish then? A nonsensical question, since I am Jewish. In that workshop, and once again I felt, as I felt among Jewish kids in Istanbul, an outsider who spoke not the same language. Then, how am I a Jewish writer? How is writing poetry in American English my version of Jewish writing? 6. A Jew without accent. The seed of an answer occurred in a confrontation over Jabez, whom the workshop presented, at least to the American eyes, as the king of Jewish literary artists, the creator of a book in exile, quotation, book in exile. I began to understand what is Jewish about me by analyzing what is false, phony about Jabez. How seeing Jabez as the ideal European Jew implies a negation of me and other non-Western Europeans, like me, as Jewish writers. Jabez and I have similar backgrounds with radically different choices to our Jewishness. Therefore, I must progress with a short critique of Jabez. Jabez exists in the United States, essentially because Derrida discovered him. Derrida discovered, or in quote, authorized Jabez. Therefore, he exists. Jabez did not have an independent prior recognition. It is absolutely essential to see that Jabez would not have existed in the States without the authorization of Derrida. Therefore, a critique of Jabez is in fact a critique of Derrida, and consequently, a critique of the mainstream American intellectuals' concentration on Europe. Why did Derrida discover Jabez? Was it a lucky incident that every artist in his or her garret dreams of? Not at all. By discovering Jabez, Derrida was legitimizing himself. They have both North African backgrounds, are both North African Jews, a fact with inescapable linguistic ramifications. Derrida spoke French among Arabs. That is to say, the language of the colonialists. When he moved to mainland France, he chose linguistically and in terms of his career the side of power. He became one of the, quotation marks, flowerings of French prose. Growing up in Egypt, Jabez also spoke French. Jabez's French, as an Egyptian Jew, is the language of the privileged class in Egypt, the privileged island of power, surrounded by the Arabic quotation sand. This, he refers to sand, deserts, and oases, and whatever. Jabez's French is like Tolstoy's War and Peace and Anna Karenina, where the main characters are aristocrats and supposed to speak French among themselves, not Russian. That's why whole sections of these novels, written in Russian, read like silent translations. Jabez also, like Derrida, moved to France. His theme of linguistic exile is not essentially the Jewish or mystical theme of the diaspora or distance from God, Hashem, but his distance, exile from the less privileged people he was surrounded by and left behind, and their language, Arabic. Arabic, at least psychically, his true home. If he played with other kids in the neighborhood, has no influence on Jabez's French. His French has no accent. If it did, it may not be accepted because purity is a French ideal closely linked to a central tradition and resists accents. Egypt appears only as a decorative metaphor with a touch of the intellectual exotic, sand, desert, oasis, etc. Arabism, acceptable to post-Napoleonic French taste in his work. As I see it, Jabez has to experience his own writing as a discontinuous series of immediate experiences without memory, memory as negative space, a key aesthetic point for him, for Derrida and for American poets influenced by both, because underlying it, can I rest a little bit and I can continue because I'm beginning to lose it.